When the credits start rolling, but the movie keeps haunting you.
Before, after.
Then it's time to tune in to Dismembering Horror. We'll talk about what worked and also what didn't. We'll dissect every aspect. Maybe some we shouldn't.
He turned out to be a completely unreliable asshole.
Take it away, boys.
Feels so special getting that intro. Hi, Tim.
Hi, Ryan.
And hello, everyone. That's right. You have entered Dismembering Horror, specifically episode 180 of Dismembering Horror. Welcome one, welcome all, welcome Nightbreeds especially, because that's what we're talking about today. From Clive Barker, from his heart and mind and soul, Nightbreed, but not just any Nightbreed, Nightbreed, the director's cut.
It's a long and winding road, but it did exist, and they found it, and they put it back together, which is really kind of an amazing thing, considering that it was presumed lost forever.
Yeah, it's a pretty beautiful thing, indeed. Cool. Well, anything else before we jump right into it here, Tim?
No, I mean, how are you, Ryan?
I'm just excited to be here, as always. How are you?
I'm great. I'm good. Hanging out with the burbs. We got a bird feeder that now they're finally hanging out, and they're joining Gary, who's, being nuts. We got a few different Garys. Slick Gary, Nubby Gary, Twirly Tail Gary. They're all great. I love the Garys.
Tim has squirrel friends called Gary that come in and nibble out of his hands. It's pretty wonderful. All right, but this isn't Cinderella or Snow White we're doing today. This is Nightbreed, the director's cut. So to get into the mode, we like to watch a trailer, and I didn't see a trailer for specifically this 2014 release of the director's cut, so we're going to set the tone with the 1990 original release here. So directed by Clive Barker, written by Clive Barker, and based on his novella Cabal. Here we go. Nightbreed, the director's cut.
Who's buried in Midian?
Ain't nothing but dead folk.
Somewhere, hidden from sight, closer than you might think, is a place that's not on any map. Midian.
Something's breeding there.
It looks a lot like hell, but they call it home.
There goes the neighborhood.
They're not pretty. They're not neighborly.
Y'all come back now, you hear?
They're not even human. But this time, they're the good guys. From the imagination of Clive Barker comes Nightbreed.
You can't go down there!
They have only one enemy. A beast called man, sworn to destroy the Nightbreed.
Sounds like we're going head-to-head with the devil himself.
And only one chance.
And there we have it, folks. Set the mood. Set the Nightbreed mood here. All right. Well, from the trailer, we like to curtail into our rating system here, or curtail that into our rating system. Would we tell ourselves to avoid, stream, rent, or buy Nightbreed, the director's cut? Who shall go first?
You can go first, Ryan.
All right.
Why not?
Let's see. I want to see it again in life with people. I think would be more fun than I watched it on my own. I want to give it a rent it. It was like just a kind of a weird experience watching on my own. Just on my screen here. I don't know. It was hard to like super get into it, but like I loved so much about it, which I'll save for when we really get into it, that I really gotta tip my hat at least now and give it a rent it.
I think I agree. I think I feel the same way. My experience watching it was not that enjoyable. I just was sort of like very lukewarm about it. There's stuff that I love, but overall, I wasn't like, hell yeah, I'm so psyched about this movie. So I don't know if that makes me a stream. I think it does, which is kind of a bummer, I guess. I don't know. So I'm going to be a stream. Sorry. Sorry to myself.
Yeah. No, I just like was watching some footage from the 2014 like fan screening in Westwood of the premiere of the director's cut. Like, man, that would have been the way to see it, because the world building is so cool. Just, I mean, yeah, we'll get into what's so cool about it. Anyway, yeah, it was just, I don't know if it was the best movie just to watch alone here. It's about like, I don't know, working with your brethren to overcome the man.
Yeah, exactly. A common theme.
Yeah. All right. Well, okay, Tim. Well, what did even happen in the film, if you'd be so kind to give us a summary? Because, folks, we'd like to hope that you watched it with us, let's say. We're going to speak as if you have, yet at the same time, we want to welcome all those who haven't. So this is just for everyone and all of us here to get on the same page. What is that page, Tim? What was Nightbreed, the director's cut?
Okay, so let's see. What do we got? We got this dude named Boone, and he's got some mental instability in his past, and this is up in Canada, and there's sort of a series of murders, and he becomes the prime suspect, partially because of his therapist or like his former therapist or whatever, and that leads him down this pathway of trying to, I don't know, exonerate himself or figure out what's going on. And he's having dreams about this place called Midian, and I think there's like lore about it, and through various people that he interacts with, he gets kind of he follows the clues, and he ends up finding this place Midian, which is like kind of like another realm. It's the kind of stuff that I generally really like, but it's in a graveyard, but it's below a graveyard, and he meets a bunch of monsters, basically, like different creatures that live in Midian, and all the while he's kind of being chased by the cops and detectives, and eventually he gets killed by the cops. He's sort of set up. And he dies, but then he's not dead because he got bit by one of the creatures, and so he comes back to life, and he kind of becomes a creature. And I mean, Midian's really cool. It's like it's sort of all very queer, and the monsters are all kind of representational of others, like the disenfranchised or marginalized or things like that. And it's super queer, and it's great. And let's see, what else? So, I mean, basically, much of this movie is sort of a commentary. You know, he's got the cops after him, and they're all this hard force, and like, we're gonna get the guy who's different and weird, and like, we don't understand him, and we don't understand this place where there are these different people or creatures or whatever. So let's just blow it all up and burn it down because we're cops and we're scared of stuff. So it's, you know, ultimately a commentary on authoritarianism in a lot of ways.
Well, that's your editorializing, Tim. This is
shit. I'm so sorry. You're right.
And you forgot there's the romance at the center of it all too. We have a
I
B
didn't know
story
how to
going
weave
on.
that in there, but it's there.
Well, meanwhile, his main gal Lori is on the hunt to see what happened to him, and tracks his whereabouts to Midian and gets caught up in the happenings as well.
That's right. I guess the big through line, besides my editorializing, is that his therapist, who's played by none other than David Cronenberg, is actually the serial killer who's obsessed with finding Midian because why? I don't know. He wants to become one of them, but he also hates them. Maybe because they don't want him to be one of them. I got a little confused about his motives. He's just a jerk.
This is not editorializing. He is a crazed leather daddy.
Yeah, that's true. So he's been killing people. And then he sort of sets out to frame Boone and then to find Midian and then destroy Midian. And there's like a pretty insane like action sequence, fight, battle, whatever. There's kind of like a battle royale action sequence with lots of explosions and lots of Boone and Cronenberg fighting and falling all over the place while Midian crumbles. But also one of my favorite entities just in all of human lore. There's my bud Baphomet, who I love. I love Baphomet. I wear Baphomet pins and necklaces and stuff. I'm a real Baphomet, stan.
Wait,
and
what?
To see Baphomet,
are you being sarcastic? What are you talking about?
I'm not being sarcastic. I have deeply philosophically connect with the concept of Baphomet. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, be my guest. But it's sort of a deity, if you will. There's a lot of debate over where it came from and whatever, but it's an icon or a deity that represents duality in man and humans, and sort of a more I take it as a more modern sort of non-binary aspect, that all of us have the feminine and the masculine in us, and that it's not a goat-headed Satan. It's more of a pagan deity that's based in balance, and I actually quite like that. I respond to that, so I'm a big Baphomet fan.
Very appropriate for that. The dark and light, the monsters and the non-monsters. Cool,
right? So they got to save Baphomet from getting killed in Midian as well. And Baphomet's kind of like, what would you call that style of? I mean, it is their god, but it's a physical form as well, down there in the depths of Midian. And Boone kind of is imbued with, or Moon is imbued with the essence of Baphomet, I think, is sort of how things pan out. There's all these subplots too going on of different characters that are kind of hard to pick apart and not that important for the summary. But in the end, we win out over the bad guys who are presented as the cops and the authoritarians, and it's kind of Cinderella-y actually.
So we can tie it to Cinderella.
Yeah. We just did it.
Actually, yeah, that ending shot where it's like they're all on the hill together and he's back and she's back alive. Something Disney-esque about it.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I think, it reminds me of the ending of The Matrix. When Neo... Well, is that the second one? It is the second one, I think, where Neo reaches inside of Trinity and pulls out the bullet and brings her back to life. The first Matrix, Trinity kisses Neo and he comes back to life. A lot of that kind of stuff. Very, very fairy tale style stuff.
Yeah. Well,
so it's all right. It's cool. It's complicated.
Cool. All right. Well, then with that, are you ready for our next big section where we talk about what worked?
Boy, am I.
All right. And kind of transition into that and give a final summary. Here we go into our next section of Nightbreed, the director's cut, which is the film that filmmaker Alejandro Jodorowsky called the first truly gay horror fantasy epic. All right, here we go. What worked?
What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked? What worked for you?
I mean, that right there, Tim, there's a lot of, the overarching things, the queer, what's above subtext. I mean, or maybe that is just the technical term for it. But
I wouldn't call it subtext.
Yeah.
It's kind of just the text.
Right. It's so fun and good. And I think when I said, there are a lot of things that really won me over by the end. I mean, not just the fun of that throughout the whole thing, that and its veins, but by the ending, when it was this story of all these monsters living in the shadows, getting gunned down by the cops and fighting back, and the fun of the deeper, scarier monsters coming out to save them, and their homes getting blown up and everything. There was just so much palpable love for these characters and outcasts just in general that it was undeniable for me, and sort of coming through, and was the bit that sort of did get me to sit up on my own here, as much as complaining about it not being fun to watch on my own. Just sort of, all that did come through, that kind of movie magic of a filmmaker's love for something, and in this case, just queer culture, I suppose, and outcast in general coming through. That, it was, as Alejandro Jodorowsky said, truly gay horror fantasy epic that, in all its pomp and circumstance, was really working by the end for me.
Yeah, I agree completely. I was really, I guess, taken by and warmed, I guess, by this representational component of the marginalized queer culture and oft oppressed queer culture, especially coming out of the 80s, when the AIDS epidemic had been that entire community had been so targeted and demonized. And it just was really cool, I thought, to see somebody be like, no, let's depict them and in this fantastical way, and sort of appreciate that they exist, for God's sake, and that they are under attack by culture a lot of the time, or if not for all of time, maybe not all of time, but in modern time they have been. And this was a nice, just sort of depiction of a marginalized group getting to fight back, and I thought that was really beautiful in a lot of ways.
Yeah, exactly. And not what I love is not just the reading itself, or that, whatever you want to call it, coming through, but it's just the fun of watching it and being able to read it that way. You get what I mean by that distinguishment? Yeah.
I thought the same thing. I thought to myself, some of us are going to identify with this through the lens of queer culture. But really, it's not about that. It's about people who are marginalized. And that could be anybody, right? It doesn't matter what your background is. If you have any experience or know anybody who's been in a position to be marginalized in that way, you can identify with this. And I think that the universal component to that was really nice. And that if you're different, there's going to be people different in quotations, right? It's such a kind of bullshit thing. But there are groups of people that, because they don't fit into this manufactured idea of a norm, that get targeted for not, getting in line with the norm. And that's so ridiculous. And yet it's such a common theme in humanity. And so to see that represented, and to see how the authoritarian sort of side of our culture often flips out because something is different. But, often that's just a reflection of those people flipping out, being like, oh, I see this parts of this in myself, and it's scary because it's scary to be different. And that's so naive and so narrow-minded, but like I really appreciated the way that this is constructed to sort of shine a light on that kind of thing.
I'm Spartacus.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, yeah, no, I just put it that way. And, in what you're saying, there's it's how this kind of story can be relatable to anyone and everyone just living in a overall oppressive society.
Totally.
And
yep.
to, I guess, transition to just another standout aspect of this for me, you kind of were mulling what David Cronenberg's motivation was during this. And I'm like,
right.
He's just a leather daddy, crazy leather daddy. Is kind of it. He represents for me, like I read it as he's like the closeted queer is what that represents. When you're trying to like parse that feeling of like, what is his exactly is his aim? He like hates them, but he wants to be one. I mean, that right there is like, he's the ultimate kind of, closeted senator kind of, who's on a war against queer people. It's
yeah. I would another possible read on it that I thought about was because I think that the main cop, he feels more like the closeted queer person who's just, he cannot deal with that part of himself. And so he's just like, just blow everything up. So Cronenberg, his character to me felt a little bit more like the actual representation of what people think is so bad or evil about, like the characteristics that people place on things that they're scared of. They say, oh, they're evil, or they're unnatural, or they're just out there for blood or whatever, right? These things that they place on another because they're just naive and they don't know what they're talking about, and they don't take the time to actually get to know this thing that's different than them. That the imagined evil that often is brought up, I felt like Cronenberg represented actionable, actual evil. Like, he just has bloodlust. He's just a evil, bad, maniacal psychopath who likes to kill people, who likes to be a bad person. And to me, he represents more the thing that people place on things that they don't understand in actuality. And it's like the misplaced idea of evil that often gets put onto, others. He actually is that thing. So I kind of strip away the queer component from his character a little bit more, and identified more of the main cop guy as feeling like this representation for closeted queerness, violent closeted queerness. Anyway, that was just my take.
I get that, but I mean, dude, look at what he's wearing. Like that.
I guess. I don't know.
I can see you take where we're both coming from and put it together. I think you get the idea that like he's beyond anyone who would ever like identify one way or the other sexually. He's pure manic evil force, you could say.
Well, he's all the bad things like that we see in people. He's maniacal, he's obsessive, he's jealous, like he's envious, he's all these things, right? Because he like clearly he wants to be like Boone, and Boone is sort of this representation of like masculinity with like a good balance of masculinity and femininity. I feel like that is threatening to Cronenberg's character. What was his character? Dr. something.
Decker,
that's right.
It's kind of a weird play on like mixing Philip K. Dick and I guess Fred Decker, the director.
Oh, interesting.
So he's Dr. Philip K. Decker.
Huh, that's interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know. For me, I got less of that, like, because of like his mask too. The kind of the eyeless. I mean, it's button eyes, which is such a weird thing, but I love it. It's so that mask is one of the like to me one of the all time great masks. The crooked mouth. Zipper mouth is, man, it's such a good design.
It'd be a great Halloween costume, right?
Oh, can you imagine strutting around with that on? Woo!
Be fun.
Man, it would be crazy. But yeah, I don't know. So I just think, you know, we're kind of given a hot take in a way, but like I'm sure that this is not unusual to respond to and identify with the queerness component, but you don't have to frame it that way.
Okay.
The end.
Yeah, you're looking up. You want to say more?
I was looking up. Did I have more to say? No.
Well, really, I mean, I just bring that up too to also say his performance and his casting, like whenever he was on screen, was when I was really sitting up in my seat. Like, what a brilliant casting choice! And God, he does a great job. I'm trying to think, like, oh God, what is the movie that he cameos in? I'm thinking of. I don't know. You know, I've seen. You know, he pops up and other things, but
he does pop up here and there.
Yeah, great job. It just brings that intensity to his acting that he does to his filmmaking. Really fun to watch.
Let's see. He's in the Fly.
That's okay.
He's the gynecologist in the dream sequence.
That's who I might be thinking of, right?
That's so good too. I love The Fly. Ugh. Anyway, so yeah, I think all of that for me to wrap it sort of back around is to say that the fun and revelry, I guess, that Barker has for these quote unquote monsters is so pleasing and so like I just think it's exciting to see, for one thing, the depiction and the differences. Like nobody's the same in that group, right? Like all of the Nightbreeds are so specifically unique in their own individual design. And it's like this weird party to go to and be like, oh, look at how beautiful diversity is and how different and people being different and also coexisting can be. And I just love that message. I think it's awesome.
And it had aesthetically that where they all live, that underground rave aesthetic, sort of like Zion meets Little Monsters or something.
Yeah. That's an amazing comparison. That's perfect.
Right. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. You knew what I meant. There's maybe I don't know. I'm going to try to tie this in to what we were saying, but as far as straddling two worlds is an idea, you could say, you know, in this kind of story or looking at it with this kind of text, but straddling two worlds, that idea came up for me in two different areas that I really latched on to and stood out to me that I don't know if they're much talked about or noticed, but there's just first there's that the setting of the entranceway to Midian. There's that feel when it's like you're first arriving, and I'm trying to think of other examples of this. It kind of feels like the outside of the Labyrinth and Labyrinth, or it's that, or like, was it not Secret Garden or Alice in Wonderland, where it's kind of like the White Rabbit seeing him jump around in the area right before he jumps down the well. It's sort of this area that's like, or like, let's say you're what you know, in like a center of the earth stories, or like under earth stories, where it's like there's the cave that might have some of the creatures around and some like statues, let's say, that are representative of actual creatures there. It's this really cool like portal between two worlds or realms, just feel, that sort of like, I don't know. It's like, we both watched per your recommendation, Hellier. It's like that whole thing. It just sort of drums up this really exciting feeling of, there is a realm just beyond ours. And just something about those like simple shots of, those statues in the graveyard and just that anticipation of knowing we're looking for another world. I just love that so much. And I know there are better examples too, but you know what I mean as far as that being a thing?
I do. I think that this is one of the things that I always respond to is the threshold between realms is just something about that. I don't know where that comes from, but it's always so exciting, I guess. I don't know exactly why, to be honest, but it's like kind of what you're saying. The anticipation of discovery is so fun. And then you get to like bridging the space between realms and how you design that is always a really fun exercise.
Yeah, we've watched a couple Giallo movies that did that thing where it's like once you get to the basement, there's then a secondary door at the end of the basement that leads to an even further cavernous area. And you can kind of ad nauseum pursue that idea and you get further and further. But kind of similar to that. The Beyond, that's the one that I was specifically thinking of.
Yeah, The Beyond. Hell yeah.
And kind of to Dark Water, or was it Waters? Yeah, it's like the island set, the evil nuns, that whole one.
Yeah.
The monster at the end, all that. And then I can kind of, as far as what I was saying about these straddling two worlds idea, that's one of them. The other one, it's actually, I can think of it too. I was just thinking of the Beyond set in that kind of like Southern Gothic feel. It's reminding me of Angel Heart.
Oh yeah.
You remember that? That's kind of also represent, I mean, it's kind of both things I'm about to say, where it's like you get the sense in Angel Heart when he's pursuing the story, he's also pursuing like the realm just beyond ours, that sort of like the whispering voodoo aware, people in the shadows, in the midst, there's kind of, know and have an idea of. But and maybe this is just same but different as far as the straddling the two realms that I already said. But the insane man at the beginning of this film, who it actually wasn't insane, but within the context of the institution, he's like trying to tear off, or he does tear off his face.
Oh yeah. He goes for it.
But just so kind of identifiable from our real world as, the crazy person on the street or in an institution or whatever, let's say. But it feels like a Clive Barker thing too, where in Hellraiser's all about these ideas as well, where just something in our like actual reality, something that someone is saying as far as self-destruction and death, self-mutilation, pain is just this or that, these sort of grand ideas and speaking about it in those terms. Something about the way Clive Barker approaches that stuff, and maybe it is just in the context of the movie, those, it's all true within the story, but it like, it gets that feeling going in me. It's like, maybe these like, just these crazy people, like it feels like they're onto something. It gives that sort of, that cosmic horror feeling of, I don't know. Yeah. We're, what we'd so easily write off as just crazy people spouting whatever, trying to tear off their face, just gives me this feeling of, oh, but what if they're onto something? Not even talking about the sense of real world or in the movie world, but just something about, I don't know, well, straddling both worlds, like everything I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, not to get down too far of a tangent, but I do sometimes think to myself, like, this idea of people being crazy or insane. So if somebody's schizophrenic, we've classified their experience as like abnormal or that they're not living in reality. And it's like, that may be true, but you know what else might be true is that they are actually able to see a different version of reality that is real. It's real to them. So like, who's to say? And like, what's the implication of that? And that's like a wild thought exercise to have with yourself.
Right. I mean, we know we perceive things the way that we do not because of, but it's tied to, or our sort of our way to read it is on just the chemicals in our brain, that just the amount and which ones are present could change so much in our perception, reminding us that everything is a perception. So maybe that sort of belief or experience for me is this kind of that allows me to. I don't know. There's something really fun about this context of, rather than just being able to like write someone off as the crazy person on the street, being like, oh no, he pops up later in Midian. Yeah, he's tapped in.
Yeah. Also, remember, they're people too.
Yeah.
They're not this like, whatever the term would be, like the unseen in a way. I think they get treated as a lot of the time.
Yep. Put them away, lock them away.
Yeah. Not cool.
Till they die. Not, yeah. Okay. How about any other kind of like broad idea things? You want to get some more specific-y things here? Specific. Sorry.
Not yet. No, I think there's some things I'll come back to in our other sections.
All right. Well, my favorite of the creature designs was the anything that wasn't as humanoid, when it was like you had the bulbous monster with the head sticking out of the middle, or all the monsters at the end.
Hell yeah.
Or like the weird lamb child that the girlfriend stumbles upon. Oh my God. Like I loved that part when she's like walking through and sees that thing lying on the ground.
Oh, who's this?
Yeah.
Whoa.
And then similarly too, on a design level, just all the sets were so cool. And if all
Insane.
Right, and if it's not enough just to admire the sets of themselves, how they're lit and everything, to then blow them up is to appreciate them in a whole another new light too.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, the design of Midian is very it's cool. It's out there though. It's this very strange, primitive, I guess, feeling, kind of like it's so impractical if you think about it, right? Like having these like rope bridge sort of things crisscrossing everywhere. But it's really cool to look at.
Yeah, can you imagine them all sitting there coming up with that?
Yeah, I like it though. It's, it's got kind of what does it remind me of? Almost like an Ewok village vibe or something to that.
It's Tarzan's treehouse at Disneyland.
Yeah, exactly.
or
It's
kind
cool,
of
though.
like the Indiana Jones ride at Disneyland too.
Yeah. Yep.
I also loved it, just talking about between worlds, going from one world into the other. I loved that there was this whole huge ritual around him becoming a Nightbreed. Stuff like that is just so fun. And when you have a group of people who take something so seriously and then have the once outsider joining them, but like taking that leap of faith and trust almost, there's, I don't know, just something very rite of passagey about that. That's fun. Or just joining, I don't know, just a sense of people getting together. Kind of like the fun too of, to just put the queer reading again on it too. So what was it called? There's that great documentary on voguing in like the 80s and early 90s. Paris is Burning. Is that what it's called?
I don't know it.
And it's like that feel of going to a Rocky Horror Picture Show for the first time or something. Just like,
Yeah.
like it's as I already said, that rite of passage thing, but that sense of community that's just on the other end of it. There's something really fun and appealing about
Yeah,
that.
and being welcomed in to something, and accepted into something it's a special thing. Even if it is a trial, it's still encased in this, like, again, this sort of revelry of acceptance, which is great.
And if there's fog and like drinking of a beverage at some point and blood ritual at some point, all great stuff.
Hell yeah.
All right. Well, anything else you wanted to say for what worked, or?
We already touched on Cronenberg. That to me is the highlight. The gore itself, I thought was quite good. The guy cutting his face off, great. So the biggest thing for me is really to kind of go a little bit further into the creature design. So a guy, Bob Keane, and his crew, they miraculously in pretty short time were the designers of all of the models and all of that stuff. And I just think it's so cool to see. It feels like an example of really collaborative free license. Like, hey, we need to do creature makeup and design and set design on this strange level. And I imagine that Clive Barker, being the person that he is, had a lot of drawings and sketches and ideas, but they executed those things, and it's a lot of design. Like there's probably 30 to 50 creatures all told, and they're all very different and they're all very unique. And I don't think any of them are lackluster in any way. Like, they're all awesome. And I just everything about the idea of getting together and collaborating to make a thing like that and having it shine in the sort of way that it does is so exciting. I mean, the dude, the sort of tentacle head dude who bites Boone, and he's got two forms, which I really like. And a lot of them actually have they have their kind of passive form and their aggressive form, which I think is really cool. Because they, the fight sequence and getting to see how all of them, their aggressive monster side in the fighting is so fun. There's the dude who says, "There goes the neighborhood," who comes back later and has these like weird pincer arm tentacle things that come out. Like, all of that stuff is to me, that's the meat and potatoes of this movie.
Yeah.
Like, all my gripes kind of, I think, are more story elements, but like from just a pure fun action design monster world realm building thing, like that stuff's the tits, if you will.
if you will.
I will. I did.
Yes, agreed. And just the one last element of the film that worked for me that I'll mention, and that helped that big ending all come together in the ways we've been talking about, creature design and love of the creatures, monsters, and all that. It's Tim Burton's score. How cool. Sorry.
Danny Elfman's. Yeah, go ahead.
Was Danny Elfman's score, which that was my only exposure to this film prior, Tim, was I had this like Danny Elfman compendium soundtrack, like was one of the first CDs I bought in middle school or something.
Wow.
And I remember just seeing like, it was like Sweet for Nightbreed, and I never knew what it was, but just when the opening credits came on for this, I just immediately brought back. And it's funny because it is so unlike anything I'd imagine, I guess, because it's so unlike Tim Burton. I mean, you could find the overlap for sure. I mean, story wise, but just as far as I don't know. Yeah, I mean where their differences are obvious. I don't know. Yeah, it was funny at first. The score, just I think I'm so used to hearing Danny Elfman with Tim Burton stuff that it was almost like, whoa, like weird. This isn't meshing almost, but it was absolutely working for me by the end because
Totally.
a great composer like that can. What is their job? Just to really bring out the depth and emotion of the situation. So it's really cool to have that by the end. And with the word fantasy being used to describe this film felt really appropriate by the end too.
Totally. Yeah, I knew the second you hear that first, like, la, 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 I was like, oh, yeah, this is Danny Elfman. Hell yeah. Here we go.
All right, cool. Well, anything else or should we move on here?
No, let's move on.
All right, here we go. What did not work?
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
All right, so like there are a lot of things that are kind of just a taste thing for me. I don't think it's like they're not really. I don't know how to describe it. I'll just say what they are, and you'll understand. I don't like this main actor. Like I just don't like him. Like there's something about him that makes me just kind of check out. I'm like, I don't find you compelling or charismatic or interesting in a way that I want, I guess. So it's so subjective, right? But he just doesn't do it for me. And so it's hard for me to like enjoy. That's why I was like, everything else is what I'm enjoying about the movie except for him.
Right. Yeah, we both mentioned how much we love David Cronenberg in it, but
right. And like I've seen this guy in a couple other things. He's in A River Runs Through It, which is, I really like that movie too. But I really dislike him as an actor in that movie as well. Like he just, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's something specific. I just don't dig him. So that sucks. I mean, it just kind of like, it takes the wind out of the sails of a movie because he's in, 90% of the movie.
Yeah.
And then my other biggest gripe is this concept that I kind of get why you do it this way, but the concept that Midian itself is just a like cave system under a cemetery. Like it's not hard to find. And I think what bothers me about that is that maybe it's just that how it's presented as a concept or an idea to the characters in the first act makes it feel like it should be an actual other realm in sort of the dimensional way that it's a place that, to me, I wanted it to be a place that doesn't exist on Earth. Now I get from a metaphorical standpoint why you have it actually be a physical real place on Earth. If you're drawing the comparison to queer culture and how the people have been kind of forced to live in the shadows, I get it. Like it makes sense. But from sort of a, I guess, again, like a subjective, like what is appealing to me about other realms and the threshold to that is that I'm more enticed by the idea of it being, it can exist in the real world, but I wanted it to be hidden more in a way. Like the gateway needs to be more magical to me.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Like in Labyrinth, which I mentioned, or the portal in the Super Mario Brothers movie, another favorite of mine. But
right. Or remember what was the name of that movie? Damn. With all of the claymation monsters.
Oh, The Gate.
Is it The Gate?
You mean
where like
in the backyard, the hole in the backyard?
Oh no, that's funny that you bring that up. That movie, during watching Nightbreed, I kept being like, there's a movie that this is reminding me of, and it is The Gate. You're right. My brother watched The Gate before me and had to like explain it to me before I could watch it because I was like too scared to watch. I was a little young.
I love The Gate.
No, it was one that we covered on the podcast. Damn, I wish I could remember what it was. Doesn't matter. There's a moment in that movie where there's another realm and the main character literally like pushes his hand through the realm and there's sort of like
Equinox?
Yes, Equinox. Thank you. This magical threshold component, not having that made me think, well shit, they're just there. That like this isn't mystical or like secret enough for my taste.
Yeah, it's interesting how I still like got that feel, but because the feel of entering it felt fantastical, it never really registered to me as it wasn't actually fantastical. But you're right, it is just like it's literally an underground cavern. There's no like when she goes down the rabbit hole, it's not like when she enters Wonderland, we aren't just going, oh, she's underground. She's in Wonderland. Or same with Oz. It's not just like, oh, she got flown to Oz. It's like, oh, she went through someplace.
Right. And so, yeah, there's something, I guess it just doesn't work to me from a concept point of view. Like, it doesn't feel quite fully thought out or something. It just doesn't quite, I don't know. It's just not magical enough, I guess, for me. But on the flip side, like I said, I get why you make it just a place.
Yeah, but you could still have, I guess, in your defense, like there could be not it wouldn't be a MacGuffin so much. Well, it's like in the Super Mario Brothers movie, they need the meteorite piece to link the two worlds. So then Dino Hatton can appear in Manhattan, and then the Dino Hatton people can rule our world, right?
Yeah,
so
I mean,
it's like
does.
The police could have, in this film, sort of through the help of David Cronenberg, been after the thing that is the mystical object that links the two worlds, versus just kind of like waltzing in there with guns. And
like they just pull up.
And that's always such a fun moment too in these those movies when it's like, rather than just pulling up, where you see the our reality grounded minded people being confronted with whatever it would be, the other realm crossing over for the first time. Whoa, can we shoot that? Whoa, what was that? Stepping through the Stargate,
Exactly. I think it adds, actually, from a storytelling point of view, it adds the element of knee-jerk reaction, the fear reaction, like shoot before thinking, because you're shocked into this moment of fight or flight. And that helps us kind of understand or get on board with this authoritarian reaction of like hard force. Just go in, shoot first, don't ask questions, because whatever it is, it's something different and scary, and we better defend ourselves from it. And it's like, if you just stopped for a second and like backed up, you could maybe not have any of this conflict.
Yeah.
But that's to the point, right?
I keep trying to think of examples that are getting at this. It's like the Nazis opening the Ark of the Covenant.
Sure.
Yeah. All that. Cool. Well, in the spirit of, even though that wasn't so much taste, that was in the story, but what is this? What did not work? We always try to pose it as educational in a sense, but really comes down just to our own subjectivity and taste. So for me, there's a weird taste thing going on with the creatures, where I agree, I loved the variety. And as I said, I loved the non-humanoid creatures especially. Mm-hmm. But something about like this style of humanoid creatures, it is like a style. Like I was trying to think of a way to define it. It's like, feels like a Star Trek alien meets Cirque du Soleil kind of. or you just see so many of this style. Because I mean, what are you doing? You know, on you see so much of this style on just like every makeup artist's page, because it's just what are you doing? You're practicing on a person. But it's like if you're gonna have a tentacle face man, I like it to the extreme of the tentacle face man, like a Guillermo del Toro way. Or it's like that part of me that I loved werewolves as a kid, but I just hated the wolf man because it just seemed like he's just still so much a dude in a way. Like, I don't know.
What about the Moonhead guy?
That too, yeah.
Mac the Knife.
Oh, that guy. Yeah. No, I don't know, man. I just, for me, like, I like if it's going to be a humanoid monster, it has to like pass this certain very subjective, arbitrary threshold I have of being closer to monster, non-humanoid monster. Like if there's a humanoid to non-humanoid monster threshold, it can't be too close on the humanoid threshold for me.
I totally get
the
it.
longest time why I didn't get into Star Trek was I was always like, just as a kind of bratty kid, just be like, it just looks like they shoved a fork up against their forehead, like whatever. I like Star Wars. I love Star Trek now, and I get it, and it's fine for that kind of where it's kind of grounded in not total science fiction, galaxy far away, but like futurism almost. I don't know.
Sure,
can be a little more closer to us, but I don't know, man. It just just felt like Halloween costumes running around to me. It's weird.
I can see that.
But at the same time, I love the design themselves, and I feel bad because it's like, again, that love of the monsters still comes through in the design. So whatever. This is the section for that. It's the venting. Hey,
to me, it's a little indicative of the short time that they had. Like I think some of the designs could have been expanded on with more time and would have been. But, I get it. So be it.
Yeah, I don't want to spend any more time on that, but all right.
Yeah.
You have anything else?
I do. I guess my biggest thing really from a technical standpoint is, and this is hard to kind of hash out when it's a director's cut, but I don't have the context of the theatrical cut to know what was added. But I do think that a half hour's worth of stuff was too much.
It's 20 minutes longer, but also 20 minutes of alternative stuff. So it's like 40 minutes total that's new.
I guess I felt like there came this point where I was like, okay, we're kind of experiencing the same beat over and over again. It was sort of like kind of in the fight battle stuff where I just was like, let's push on here. Like we've gotten enough of this. It didn't feel like it was stacking in the way where the threat was getting bigger and bigger. It just felt like we were just watching a fight. And I just kind of got bored with it, to be honest. There's a whole like maybe 20 minutes where I was like, all right, like let's get to it here. You kind of lose Boone and like what he's trying to accomplish through in this section. And not that that's necessarily the worst thing, because I didn't really like him, but all in all, it just felt like the movie slogged for a minute, in spite of the fact that it's the action sequence. So I don't know. I was just kind of like, I got bored, which sucks.
I feel you.
Yeah.
All right.
But that's really it.
Great. Well,
it's fun.
Yeah, let's see if we can end on a high note here with our next section. Maybe we should like reverse those orders, end on a positive note. I don't know. We're always wrestling. At least I'm always wrestling with a what did not work section. But we do have our next section, our indifferent observational section. Let's get to it. Things of note.
Things of note!
This should be interesting.
I just have a question. I've never dove in, if that's a word, dived into Clive Barker, really. What's his deal? Like, what's he all about?
I mean, that's what you should have researched and told us all about, Tim. Yeah,
but I want to hear it from you.
I mean, I don't know too much about him. I know he identifies as queer and is an author as well as a filmmaker, and I believe this was his second film after Hellraiser. I know he's British, I believe.
Okay. I mean, that's cool. He's an interesting dude to me in that he seems to be pretty prolific. Like across mediums. He's got comic books, he's got novellas, he's got short stories, he's got plays, he's got screenplays, he's a director. Like, he's pretty impressive. I mean, he's an visual artist, game producer. Like, I'm kind of fascinated. I want to know more about him because it's wild how prolific he is. He's not that old either, man. He pumped out a lot of content in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, I do. I have on my Los Angeles Public Library reading list some of the books that some of his books I want to get to. So at some point I'll read stuff of his and can get back to you. But
I mean, listen to this. He occasionally, apparently, occasionally worked as a male prostitute or sex worker when he wasn't making enough money off writing.
Wow, there you go.
Like, you got to do what you got to do sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But he seems quite fascinating to me.
Well, speaking of him being prolific, or at least stuff having to do with Nightbreed going on to have more prolific life. It was cool to learn there were, comic books that tied in with the film's release, where it was a 4-issue adaptation of the film, which was more related to, his original vision for it, which I guess is, the 2014 director's cut version, more related to that. But what was so interesting is that it continued the run of the comic book way past the end of the film. Like, it went on to 25 issues total. So they got to tell this full Nightbreed extended story, which is kind of curious what that would look like. And in the Q&A that I watched of the director's cut screening of this film in Westwood in 2014, he said that it was going to be the character Ashbury. He was supposed to go on and find and empower the Nightbreed. So I guess that, which I didn't quite get from the film, but what I got from that quote was that they're in other parts of the world. They aren't just in a graveyard in Canada.
Cool.
Yeah. So that could see, being a story. So I don't know. That sounded cool.
Well, they made a video game.
And I was going to say they made 2 video games that came out at the time too. I watched a video breaking them down of some guy playing through both of them. They were made by a company that's not LJN, but another British video game company that has a bad reputation for kind of adaptations or whatever. But it was so funny. Yeah, the 2 games, there was the one Nightbreed, the action game that was like a side scroller or whatever. It is just one of those terrible games where it was like every time you kicked, he made the same like grunt noise or whatever. So it's just just the whole game is just that. And then thought it was really interesting and kind of a fun time capsule for this late 80s, early 90s era, if you were around then. But if you weren't, folks, there was kind of a run of this was called Nightbreed, the interactive movie, but something that's more kind of like point and click adventure game where it was like you had characters that were, this funny, now classic graphic style talking at you, weird interactive maps. sort of like you jump into like all of a sudden for a moment you have to press spacebar really quickly to run away from Tentacle Head Dude when he's trying to chase you at the graveyard at the beginning, all that stuff. Yeah, it's supposed to be not great, but still fun that they exist and they're out there.
That's exciting.
Well, and I guess most significantly, which we've alluded to throughout this, or as far as something most unique about this film, is it was one of those first instances of what is now a somewhat in vogue thing of the idea of a film being released that did not adhere to the director's vision, but was largely a product of the studio just trying to push it to put it in some sort of more marketing-minded direction. But yeah, this was a first one where it was there was a fan edit or sort of cobbled together edit called the Cabal Cut, where footage was found like in the 2000s that was put together. And then, people had already kind of heard of this missing footage and, the story behind it. The studio messing up. Clive Barker wasn't happy with it. He said the studio just didn't get the idea that the monsters like supposed to, they just didn't get the whole point of the story of like monsters being the good guys, all that.
God,
which you can't, cut out of them. Anyways, it was Scream Factory who, was like, oh, that'd be cool. We want to release Nightbreed, but like they kind of do at the studio, Scream Factory, release label. It's kind of like what they'll do, like Beastmaster is a film, Tim and you and I like, where
I love Beastmaster so much.
Right, where the label that re-released that, they like did their best to track down the original long lost missing print, couldn't find it. But anyway, it's just fun to know there's these release studios labels out there trying to dig up footage or prints or whatever. But
it's wild that they can find it.
Yes, exactly. So Scream Factory, they did successfully find this missing footage. And it was cool because Clive Barker kind of pointed out, it took 25 years, whatever, but that if it hadn't taken that long, that the technology to restore like the proper, which I didn't actually saying it out loud again. And at the time I didn't quite get, because wouldn't you not need to restore it so much if it was closer to the time that it was shot? But anyway, he made it sound like that thanks to it taking that long, on the technological side, it's the best it could have been. So it's just one of those cool cases. And he put it as it transformed the film for him from such incoherence to such coherence. And it was the first instance, as far as he knew, of that happening with a film. The original Snyder cut, if you will.
Yeah, there you go. Wow. I bet that's a really exciting and like satisfying thing to get to experience too.
Yeah, especially if you're a fan of this movie way back then and had heard this being talked about through all the years. Yeah.
Well, cool, man.
Cool. All right. Well, if that's it for Nightbreed, we like to wind down here with some RecommenDEADtions. Tim, what would you like to recommend, Ed?
I've been thinking about this TV show. 2 days ago, we recorded a follow-up episode of our connected podcast friends podcast called Shows with Friends, and they posited some other shows that we have been into or all-time favorites type of thing. And I remembered this show that I love called Fringe, which was, I think it was like on Sci-Fi Network maybe, or maybe it was actually on Fox. I don't know. It was a J.J. Abrams show. And it's just, it's Monster of the Week for a little bit, but it turns into this wild, interdimensional, like time-slipping, cool, weird sci-fi, just extravaganza. And unfortunately only had a couple seasons, maybe 3 seasons, and they had to cut it short. But it's so well worth it. The lead actor, whose name, of course, I can't remember off the top of my head, is really good. She's also in Mindhunter. She's great. Everybody's great in it. It's really fun. It's got that kind of like, let's just like all bets are off. Let's just go nuts with the sci-fi. And I just, it's fun. It's a great show. Check it out.
It's something I've only heard of in name, and I didn't really have an idea about. So maybe I will.
Anna Torg is her name.
Torg?
I believe so, yeah.
Torg.
She's like Swedish or something.
Got it. Cool. Well, to stay in our theme for today of queer, gay cinema, or, we're kind of like, we're forced to use those terms still. I hate having to use labels at all, but we're still in that world. I watched a film that was a rom-com, I guess you'd call it. From it was because that's what you'd call like a When Harry Met Sally or something. Right?
Yeah, sure.
Called Saving Face from 2004, directed by Alice Wu. It was about Chinese American lesbians and sort of at the dealing with their culture that does not look too kindly on their ways. But it was like so sweet, and it just reminded me like just how just making, I don't know, I just get so much more into it when it's just like, I'd rather watch two women in a rom-com, to be honest.
That's fair.
So it was really good. It was on Criterion Channel right now from 2004, Saving Face. It was super, super fun, enjoyable. Check it out.
Maybe I will, Ryan.
Is that a threat?
Yep.
I hope you do. I think I have a better track record of watching your RecommenDEADtions.
Probably.
Cool. All right. Well, that's it. We wind down with our RecommenDEADtions. I wanted to close out here, Tim, with some words from Clive Barker himself from a 2-minute intro that he made for the original VHS release of Nightbreed.
Oh, wow. All right. Let's hear it.
I hope the breed will remain with you as they remain with me. After all, we all need a few friends to get us through the night. In closing, thanks for listening.
And we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.